Hi everyone, and welcome to our first Blockchain Professionals Brown Bag session of 2022. My name is Daniel Simpson, and I'm a community member, senior business analyst, and blockchain mentor for ePalm Systems. Today we've got a really interesting presentation from Belgian-based company SettleMint. SettleMint were formed in 2016 with the aim of providing a practical and easy-to-use solution for ramping up blockchains easily and quickly. It means you could see your real-world solution go live in a matter of weeks or even days. But why do many blockchain solutions fail? To talk about this, and on behalf of the community, I'd like to welcome the two founding members of SettleMint, Matthew and Roderick. Guys, over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks so much, Daniel, for the introduction, and happy to be here to kick off the Brown Bag sessions for the year. Maybe a short intro about myself. So I'm originally from Canada. I've been living in Belgium for about 15 years now. Most of my career I've been in the financial services sector. Got into blockchain tech in 2014 while I was at a bank here in Belgium called KBC. And I started together with a number of with a couple of others in the bank, a center of excellence for blockchain tech. So we did a lot of experimentation, R&D on different use cases and seeing how we can work with blockchain tech. And that led me to leaving the bank eventually to start SettleMint and make the path, the journey that many companies are eager to take into blockchain as easy as possible. And I'll hand over to you, Roderick, for a bit of an introduction.
Yeah, I usually don't say much in these introductions because who cares about who I am, but what I can do. Always been in tech, always been fascinated by building things, and the blockchain space is as exciting as the internet was in 1995. Everything is new, everything is strange, and you can do the most amazing things. And that's why I got into it, and that's why we started. That's what I can do every day at SettleMint, just doing my hobby, building stuff.
Great. So indeed, and just for the next topic, the topic of the day is looking into what are some of the reasons that companies struggle with blockchain technology, and looking at ways that they can overcome those challenges. So I'll jump into presentation modus, and I think if there are questions along the way, please put them in the chat or in the comments, and we'll be sure to address them at the end of the session. But yeah, let's dive straight in. I'll share my screen. Here we go. Something a bit different than the practice session. I'll just see if I can get this working properly. Here we go. All right, so hopefully you can see on my screen the provocative title, Why Enterprise Blockchain Implementations Fail. And just a little bit, a few more words about SettleMint. We have done R&D on over 800 different use cases. We've launched about 120 pilots to date, and we have 35 to 40 implementations that have gone to production. And most of that has been with enterprise. So we are quite familiar with the challenges that enterprise face. And I'll refer to a number of findings from Gartner research about the reasons for implementations in the enterprise context that do not make it past the lab and don't make it into production. But so who we are, I said enough about that at the beginning. SettleMint, just very briefly then, SettleMint is a blockchain platform as a service company. And as rightly mentioned in the introduction, it's the platform is designed to go from a concept to a fully implemented and integrated solution in the shortest time frame possible. So we're going to look at what are some of the things that lead to, let's say, hiccups in the blockchain digital transformation journey for many companies, what implications those have, what are some solutions, and looking into a couple of, we'll get into some practical use cases after the first part of the presentation. So, but what SettleMint, to put a context or put a frame around what we're all about, essentially what companies like WordPress does for websites and Stripe does for payments, that's really what SettleMint does for blockchain. It's a low-code platform that accelerates blockchain implementations. But looking at the current context for enterprise blockchain projects. Only this is about 20. The research conducted by Gartner back in they published it at the end of 2020 was that only 14% of companies that are working on blockchain R&D activities get their applications moved into production. Of course, there's a difference geographically. The lowest, what I call the propensity to go to production, is observed in North America. Europe, with only around 5 to 6% of projects going from a concept to a production launch. In Europe, those figures are around 8 to 9%, and in APAC, their study found that they were closer to 15%. But overall, the success rate is low. So a lot of companies are investing a lot of time, money, effort, resources in understanding how blockchain can benefit their business, but very few of them are able to get out of the lab and into production where they can, and why that's of course critically important. If we stop at a proof of concept, we have a nice shiny object, but we're not delivering any business value. So we'll look at what are the challenges that are identified. So again, getting from a use case identification done, then building a business case for the actual implementation in order to understand what benefits can be brought by blockchain technology, and then doing the first experiments with actual technical experiments or proof of concepts. Typically, that takes companies 9 to 15 months to get to that point. And from an enterprise context, usually the next step is, okay, let me try to secure a budget for next year if the results of the proof of concept were favorable or positive. But a 9 to 15 month time cycle to finish a proof of concept is really, there's the mantra in an innovative context of failing fast. Well, I think we can all agree that 9 to 15 months is not fast. So that's what a big problem is. If it takes 9 to 15 months to figure out if we can, if the business case is there and the proof of concept works technically, it's just too long. So that is one of the major problems. And now dissecting it a little bit further, and the fact that it takes a long time to get to that point of canceling an implementation or deciding not to proceed with it, there are high costs involved with that, and the companies get stuck in this perpetual wheel of experimentation and investment without getting outside of the lab. But let's the two areas I'll zoom in on that we've observed and Gartner has observed as leading to implementation failures is, first of all, and I think the most acute reason for that is developer skill scarcity. So in in Europe, they're looking at the numbers about how many blockchain developers are in the market. We see that less than 1% of the developers, have any experience or competence with blockchain technology. So it's still a very, very, very small proportion of developers who have implemented something with blockchain technology. The second is that after all the R&D work we've done, proof of concepts we've delivered, and also production applications that we've launched with the platform, is that there is a set of predictable, repeated challenges that every implementation fails. And we'll zoom into both areas: the skill scarcity and also the predictable issues that come up. So again, mentioned the 1% of developers being competent with blockchain tech. So what are and then looking at how do companies respond? So that if they believe that, okay, we may have an acute skill scarcity, but we need to overcome that if we want to leverage the benefits that blockchain can bring to the organization. So the typical responses are, of course, to build an in-house team. So I might decide as a CTO or CIO that I want to build an internal team that's going to learn about blockchain tech. I'm going to invest in capabilities. So I set up a course of 18 to 24 months where developers are learning about blockchain technology and how it can be used in the organization. The reality is that after 2 years of let's say, learning about blockchain tech, the companies have just created the most sought-after developers in the market. So there's a high attrition of developers that build those skills in these internal teams, and then either leave to start their own startup with an application that they have in mind, or they are going to be poached by a competitor who would pay them more. So it becomes this perpetual lost investment that companies get into when they try to build really talented teams of blockchain developers. There are a few companies that pull it off, but it's quite rare. The second option is, if I'm not going to build internally the capability, then I will look for external talent to support my developer team. And so then quite often it's hiring a consultancy that will do the work for you. And that is, of course, creates a long-term dependency on that external company in order to see your application built, launched, and run in production. Another quite common response is to join a consortium. So there are a number of consortia in the areas of insurance and trade finance. Pretty much every sector now there are consortia that are set up. And it seems like a logical conclusion to join a consortia. They already have the network set up. They already have the use cases built. The consortium members are enjoying it and benefiting from it. There is that's a completely valid route to take. There is, however, a bit of what a lot of companies that are joining consortia find is that there's not a lot of flexibility in terms of customizing solutions to their specific needs within their organization. And for getting new use cases built or new applications built, quite often there's a rather rigid governance structure in these consortia in order to decide upon which focus areas they'll have next. So it's certainly a valid way to go to join a consortium. Blockchain is a team sport, so of course joining a preformed team and consortia with several members is a great way to get started. But it does have the drawback that there might be a limited flexibility and a slow decision-making process when we want to step into new application domains as a company. Finally, insourcing a solution is also a pretty common option to take. So I have a vertical solution. Take, for example, a vertical solution for bond tokenization in the banking context, or a vertical solution for supply chain management or sustainable supply chain management. There are ample solutions on the market of companies that are building a very specific vertical. Now that might serve the short-term needs of the organization to get a quick launch. However, it does over time as companies insource a number of different solutions. They run into problems with interoperability between these different applications. They may have one application, for instance, for document management. They may have a separate vertical type solution for a specific use case like supply chain management or bond tokenization or something else, and maybe a third one for identity management. So there's getting a multitude of different vertical solutions leads to the CIO's nightmare of a bit of spaghetti in the back end where these different applications are not interoperable and they don't communicate with each other. So it creates a bit of spaghetti in the back end. So those are, with the skill shortage, some of the common responses and some of the common drawbacks to those responses. And but I want to talk further about the predictable and repeated technical challenges that companies face as well, that cause them to lose speed with the implementation, lose momentum in the organization, and the opportunity to benefit from the technology gets marginalized or minimized. First of all, setting up the infrastructure. So if I want to work with blockchain technology, I want to build something that uses a DLT. Getting that network set up is of course the first challenge. So if it's a permission blockchain, I might be bootstrapping the network with the first set of nodes, and then I'll look to expand my ecosystem thereafter. But getting so deploying a node in one's infrastructure, or be that cloud or on-prem, there are a lot of configurations that need to be made. So firewalls and proxies, just to set up the nodes of the network and to get them operating. But of course, getting them operating is not sufficient. I need a monitoring UI on top in order to monitor the health of the network to make sure it's functioning properly. So in and what we've seen in the market, this is usually when companies are doing this, they're looking at 3 to 4 months to get all of the components that they need in order to install the software locally, and the nodes locally, getting that set up, and then building some kind of a UI on top is typically 3 to 4 months in order to achieve that. When they've done that, of course, unless you're mining, there's not much, let's say at that point, there's not much benefit from it. But of course, the next step is building the actual use case. So here we talk about the smart contracts required, so that distinct business logic that we want to encode and put on chain in order to execute or automate, autonomously execute or automate functions that are in our business processes. So that process is, again, it's 2 to 4 months typically in order to get that right. So of course, first mapping out the end-to-end flow of the process, identifying who all the stakeholders are in that process end-to-end. Then once that's understood, you can start forming a data model from where you can develop the smart contracts required for that process and that business logic. Once the smart contract is developed, then of course you want to audit and test it, make sure that there are no vulnerabilities that are being introduced through the use of smart contracts, and then deploying it on the network. And I didn't have mentioned here monitoring those as well, but of course you need to set up an environment where you can see what's happening with the smart contracts that you've deployed. So all of this part of the blockchain journey, we've got the infrastructure set up, and that took us 3-4 months. Now another 2 to 4 months to build the specific use case. And this is when we get to, in the previous slide, the 9 to 15 months. Typically from a technical perspective, we're at this point. So we've got the infrastructure set up, we've got smart contracts running, I've completed a proof of concept. So again, we're talking anywhere from 9 to 15 months to get to this point, typically for most organizations. Now those are the first two issues. The third one is, of course, the blockchain technologies, as Roderick mentioned, they are relatively new compared to other technologies, and one thing that can certainly be said is they don't speak natively with other systems, other legacy systems that we have in the organization. So there's a big integration exercise that needs to be done. So just to give an example, if I want to integrate, or if I'm using SAP as an ERP system, and I want to take information out of SAP and put that into the blockchain, and to store some information from SAP there, I've got to build those integrations. And if I want, when the transactions have been executed on chain, I want to send information back to my ERP system or my CRM system or wherever I might want to send the information, I've got to build more integrations there as well. So depending on the complexity of the use case, we're talking typically 4 to 18 months in order to integrate a blockchain solution into an existing infrastructure. So there's, and again, that's the biggest part of the journey for most companies, is getting that integration work done. And that's critically important, is it's only when in an enterprise context, when you have the bridge between the on-chain and off-chain world complete, that you are able to start utilizing it in production, and you can start to generate business value from the processes that you're automating, or the new businesses that you're creating, business opportunities you're creating from that. Okay, so the final issue to talk about in the context of blockchain is, I gave the example earlier of, I might be a large company that's bootstrapping a permission network to start off, and but blockchain is really, if the implementation is going to stay at the level of one organization committing information to a blockchain, there's absolutely no value of using blockchain in the first place. We should just use a centralized database. That would be much more efficient. So blockchain, just to underscore, blockchain is a team sport. So when we did the mapping of our in the preparation of building the smart contracts, when we did the mapping, we really want to take an end-to-end view of the value chain, identify who all the actors are in that value chain, and at this point, once the use case is built, to scale that out to an ecosystem of stakeholders is the next challenge. So what are the challenges that come with that? Well, we identify them. If we've done a proper end-to-end mapping of the value stream, then we've already done the identification of those stakeholders. But we have to also convince them to join the network so that they can operate a node and commit information to chain for their part of the workflow or the process. So getting them, I've talked to members of a consortia who explained or kind of outlined the journey for onboarding to a consortia, and it can be a non, let's say, in their case, it was a very non-trivial example. It took them 5 months to properly join, and that's just to get started. So there are a lot of there's typically a lot of work to be done, both convincing and then on the technical side doing the implementation to join an existing system. And once the members are into the network, they're operating nodes of the network, then orchestrating so that all of the transactions of the different members takes place as designed. There's quite a workload to ensure that that is done correctly. So what we've looked at, there's in looking at or dissecting, the reasons why companies often struggle to get beyond a POC. There are both skill gaps that need to be addressed, and there are also a number of technical challenges that every implementation will face. All right, and as a result of this, as Gartner found, 9 to 15 month period of getting to a POC before even talking about integration. This leads to the inability of organizations and be they public or private sector to iterate and rapidly develop new solutions. So what we've and this is a little bit what we've done at SettleMint by dissecting this problem is look at each of those steps in the process to devise tools for developers in order to accelerate each step in that journey. So when working with the platform, it's a relatively straightforward process. Getting the infrastructure in place is click and deploy. So I choose my cloud, choose my region, choose my blockchain protocol, be that DLT or public chain that I want to use. So get all of that configuration of the network and the infrastructure setup done in a matter of minutes rather than 3 to 4 months that we were looking at previously. Once that's done, building the blockchain application is the next step. And so what we've done to accelerate that part of the journey is adding in smart contract template sets that offer an integrated development environment. So the template is there, but I can fully customize it to fit perfectly to the business logic we have in our ecosystem. And so that'll, getting the build time for a use case from 2 to 4 months down to typically 2 to 3 days is what this part of the platform provides for. The biggest challenge that we mentioned, so the integration. So the platform comes with a visual programming environment where I can visually program the integrations between the off-chain systems that enterprise is commonly using with the logic that we've built in the smart contracts on-chain. So the integration studio enables companies to move to production in typically in 2 to 3 weeks. They can do all of the custom data and systems integration flows that are required to bridge between the on-chain and the off-chain world and back again. In terms of scaling the network to an ecosystem of partners, we've embedded an invite float for that, where I can already configure the governance permissions that I provide to different members joining the network in the invite flow. They receive an invitation to join, and they can walk through the setup of their node and join the network in 10, 15 minutes rather than 5 months that I heard in the market that it sometimes takes to join consortia efforts. And of course, all of the monitoring software is there. The ability to scale up implementations is there. So the UI provided in the SettleMint platform enables DevOps and systems admins to oversee the system, monitor the health of it, and ensure that enough sufficient resources are allocated to the deployment. So yeah, I mentioned a number of, well, looking at who's using the SettleMint platform. So there is quite a lot in the banking sector. So looking at use cases like KYC and digital identities, but more commonly asset tokenization use cases. So whether that's tokenization of an existing financial asset, or that's directly from issuance. In which case, sorry, if it's for existing financial assets, then an asset-backed token, for example, is something that's quite commonly being developed on the platform. But also issuance. So going a step further back and doing native issuance on chain is another area that the financial services sector in particular is using the platform for. A lot also in the supply chain sphere, and we'll get into some of the use cases in the next section. But having what starts is quite often supply chain tracking for a specific good. We've seen users of the platform extend that to not just supply chain tracking to provide transparency to end consumers, but also adding into it things like ESG scores from different suppliers, adding certificates, for example, for bio products that can be, the source of the valid proof of status as a bio or organic product is typically the farm. So having the ability to enable them to add these kind of certifications to the product at an early stage can be carried through the chain, so that what was originally a supply chain tracking type use case becomes a sustainable supply chain tracking use case. And when you add in also financing options for companies down, let's say upstream from the company at the like AB InBev or Carrefour, then you come to a situation where sustainable supply chain finance becomes enabled because the network is in place, the suppliers are connected, and we see that getting that first level in, and then extending to sustainable supply chain, then extending to sustainable supply chain financing by growing the ecosystem to include financial services companies, kind of plots a journey, and that is quite interesting when the network is set up and the use cases are built and the stakeholders are onboarded. All right, so I think for talking about the first part of the presentation, so just to recap, to answer the question I posed at the beginning, why do only 14% of blockchain enterprise blockchain implementations succeed? That is, what we've identified in our efforts over the past 6 years almost, together with the research of Gartner, is that there's one is painfully obvious. It's a scarcity of developers that are competent with blockchain technology. And the second is a number of repeated predictable challenges. And what we do at SettleMint is create developer tools so that you don't need to be a blockchain expert to do these things. We abstract it away with a low-code and visual programming approach, so that the developers in the organization or the partners that they work with for development work are able to deliver the blockchain applications in a fraction of the time than it would otherwise take. All right. So that was the first section. And if there were any questions that came in during that presentation, happy to field those now before deep diving in a couple of the use cases today. Hi, Daniel.
No, nothing at the moment, Matt.
Okay.
So feel free. Just before you continue, just reminder to viewers, if you do have a question, just feel free to just chat it in the comments section on our live feed, and we'll get to those. Any time or towards the end.
Okay.
Yeah, please continue, Matt.
All right. So looking at a selection of the use cases. So one of the companies that we've been working with is Carrefour. So they're quite well known that Carrefour is working with IBM on food trust as a platform. Carrefour in Belgium has taken a different direction. They decided to do similar things, but with a different approach, working with us and their implementation partners. So what they wanted to do for certain lines of premium products was to respond, to create trust in the brand, and also to provide transparency to consumers. This is that kind of a farm to fork type use case. And being able to verify independently, or providing customers with the ability to independently verify that when something is stamped with a bio label, that it is in fact bio. So when scanning the product, the customer is able to go all the way back to the journey of the food item, whether that's chicken or other meat products, and see the digital history as it moved through the supply chain. So this has led to a couple of impact that they documented and published back in, I think that was 2021 that they published that. This led to both an increase in sales as customers feel a lot more trust in the brand, and also 90 seconds on average was the amount of time reported that customers are spending in-app. So there's the benefit, of course, of providing transparency, but there is also a business impact of doing so. The next one, also in the supply chain type use cases, we did together with one of our partners, did an implementation. The partner in this case was Fujitsu. So they worked together with AB InBev and us on the implementation of a similar type use case, in this not farm to fork, but in this case barley to beer type of an application. And this is where the initiative being driven by the sustainability team, they have the ambition to utilize that network to drive sustainable agricultural practices throughout their network of farmers that supply barley to them. And that's from an end user perspective. The external packaging has a QR code on it. I can scan it and go back to, in this case, the farmer was Paul. So meet Paul, the farmer that grew the barley that went into the beer that I'm consuming. So this is another example, going from all the way from the origin of the ingredients that are used to produce beer, going from the farm to the malting process, to the fermentation process, to the bottling process, and eventually to the stores where I buy the product. And on the sustainability side, so there is, with this example and the previous one, there is a consumer dimension to it that enables brands to create an engaging consumer experience and build brand loyalty. But the bigger, the more fundamental driver in AB InBev's case is to decrease the agricultural footprint of the brewing process. So by collecting the data throughout the supply chain, by analyzing that data with AI and machine learning, they're able to identify farms that have higher yields, and the aim is to understand better what those farms are doing that's different than other farms, and use those best practices to disseminate those best practices throughout the same network in order to incentivize other farmers who adopt those best practices, and when that's the case, decrease the agricultural footprint of the beer supply chain in this case. All right. And I'll jump into another one for energy, the energy grid. So this was an initiative we did with Elia. This one did stop at a POC, but it was a really insightful use case for Elia to find new ways to keep the grid balanced. So as a transmission system operator, Elia has as a mandate to make sure that the grid is properly supplied with energy, and what and with the energy providers to the grid, there's different types of providers. There's the primary providers, which are traditional sources like coal or nuclear. There are secondary suppliers, which are renewables, so energy, so wind and solar. And they wanted to explore in what ways blockchain could support to look at tertiary suppliers. And tertiary suppliers to the grid are typically large consumers of energy. So it could be, like a factory that consumes a lot of energy. It could be a supermarket that has energy consuming cooling facilities in place. And by what this one was about was taking extending the grid, extending the bidding process for provision of energy, not only to the primary and secondary energy providers, but also to tertiary suppliers. So essentially the implementation was looking at large consumers, those large consumers being able to bid to reduce their consumption of energy during hours where the TSO forecasts that higher than possible, higher than available energy consumption would be required. And by opening it up to tertiary suppliers, they find, let's say, cost-effective ways to ensure that there's sufficient energy in the grid. So that was an interesting one to see how blockchain could support more sustainable practices for the energy sector and keeping the grid balanced. All right, and I think I'm going to finish up. So we looked at 3 use cases, 2 in the supply chain domain, 1 in the energy sector, and very happy to take any questions you have, and eager to hand over to Roderick afterwards to give a demo of the platform.
Yeah, so we do have a couple of questions, Matt. So we'll start off with one identified as blockchain simplified. What is your comment on the growth for the blockchain platform as a service in the coming years?
Yeah.
Blockchain platform as a service.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think when we started back in 2016, we looked to scour the market to see if there were comparable solutions, and there were platforms that were starting offering what I would call more like node hosting as a service, and those kind of services were there were a few available. If I were if I look today at the market for not just node hosting as a service or blockchain as a service, there you have companies like Chainstack as an example, Infura as an example. There's that level of service and that kind of provision of services has essentially been commoditized already. So there are lots of companies that offer, let's say, node hosting as a service, and where we differentiate is we add additional things on top of that for smart contract development, for ecosystem building, and also for integration capabilities in middleware. And in that space, we were a bit unique for a while, but now there's also a number of competitors that are in that as well. So we have companies like Kaleido and Simba that are 2 other examples of they don't have quite as high up the stack as we are, but that kind of a market it's really exploding, to be honest, Daniel. There's a lot of companies that are doing different variants of this now, and we just happen to spot the need for it early, and now as a result, in 5.5 years of development, have the most complete blockchain platform as a service that's available today.
That's great, thanks. Yeah, and I guess as everything matures in the blockchain space, we're going to see more of these kind of sort of easy to use kind of interfaces, maybe.
Yeah. I think it's a natural step as companies want the acute shortage of developers that are competent with blockchain tech means that you need abstraction in order to move ahead with blockchain implementation. So ourselves and others in the space are really there to accelerate blockchain adoption and make it easy for developers. And I think it's a rapidly growing solution set that's available on the market. That's
great, thanks. We've got one from Kelroy James. This is about the skill sets. So he says, with the lack of blockchain developers, what's the best route to obtain training? Online courses, company-sponsored upskilling, or through universities? So
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you have a view on that, or if you have some experience.
Yeah. There's if maybe I would say come work for SettleMint. We have that may be a bit tongue in cheek there, but the best way to learn is by doing. And I think Roderick could also chime in on if on the topic of how best to upskill. But it's the best way to learn is by doing. And universities are of course starting to offer courses. There are a number of like 101 blockchain is a good resource as a providing training for developers, training for solution architects, and others. So there are a number of options on the market. Also, for more the business side, there's Coursera. They have a number of open learning courses from reputable universities around the world that give. There is some technical ones, but more business-oriented skills development through Coursera. If you go to Coursera and type blockchain, you'll get a list of probably 50 different courses that are currently available at an affordable rate online.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're seeing more certifications now, aren't we, as well? Some kind of quote unquote official sort of qualifications that you can go out there and do. And from my point of view, also sort of hands-on playing around with something as well is definitely a great way to learn, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Also, Carol, if you are from EPAM, you could also reach out to me, and I can probably give you a bit more information about where to go with that, because we do offer some internal things at EPAM as well. Got a question from Alex. What's the benefit for companies to switch to blockchain?
Yeah. There's that is, I guess the correct way to answer that is it depends. Is there's a lot of different starting points, and if I only look at, and I'll give an example, like for supply chain, we've worked with. With Carrefour and that they built on our stuff, and what for them it was about providing transparency to customers. So the benefit was what they were looking to do is gain public trust, and by providing independently verifiable information on blockchain, they were anchoring to the public, the mainnet Ethereum network. So the information is publicly verifiable. And that was the primary objective. So to set up a system that would provide trust in a simple way was their driver. AB InBev, as mentioned, that's about driving sustainability. So there are let's say objectives. So it depends, like on what the user of anyone who's implementing blockchain technology, they have different drivers for it. It might be. I give another example. We did an implementation in 2019 for the Indonesian presidential election, and the process of tallying votes. Indonesia is I think it was 17,000 islands that make up Indonesia, and it's a paper ballot voting system. So you got to get paper ballots and the ballot boxes out to what was it, close to 800,000, just over 800,000 polling stations across 17,000 islands, and then after the vote is completed, bring those the poll boxes back with all the votes in it and count them. So the process takes 6 to 8 weeks to complete, and people there's social unrest in that period. So if you can implement at the polling station a method to record the result of the polling station and instantly tabulate that and aggregate that to a national outcome, then you close the window for social unrest to occur. And the unfortunate thing when there is social unrest is that people die, and that happened in Indonesia. There are people in the streets that are supporting both participants in the election, claim victory, and that leads to social unrest. So the objective there is let's close the window. So we close the window of time that it takes to tabulate the results, and therefore close the window for social unrest, and therefore have a direct impact on everybody in society. So it really depends, and there's a lot of different ways you can utilize the technology for different business or social drivers.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Okay, another one from Blockchain Simplified. How do you bring participants to a consortium? Does SettleMint do that, or your customers bring those?
Yeah, the identification of consortium members in combination with the engagement with them, there is a technical part to that and a non-technical part to that. So on the technical side, we make that easy by having a simple invite flow where I can set the governance for new members that are joining. What rights do they have in the context of a permission network, and do they have? That doesn't replace the need to have meetings and discuss and onboard, but that we typically we support to some extent, but it's not our core business. If the clients want to grow a consortium, we can support by providing templates for consortia agreements and things like that. But it's typically up to in a permission blockchain context, the ones that are bootstrapping the network at the beginning in order to extend the consortia to new membership.
Sure. Thanks. And I think we've got just one more. Let's take one more, and then perhaps continue on with the presentation, Matt, if that's good with you.
Yep.
And then anyone that's got further questions, perhaps we'll get to those, and there'll be plenty of time at the end of the session to get through.
Mm-hmm.
So the final question now is, can you expand on your interaction with IBM and what infrastructure platform is being used to run the blockchain network?
Yeah. So for our interaction with IBM, well, essentially we compete. We don't use IBM's technology. What I mentioned, I think that maybe the question is coming from the Carrefour use case. So in that one, let's say, just go back to it a second. But so setting this up is using the SettleMint platform, which was implemented by a local implementation partner in Belgium. We're not in any way interacting with IBM or IBM's solutions for this implementation.
That's great. Thanks. Okay, so yeah, feel free to continue, Matt, and we'll have another Q&A a bit later on.
Yeah. But I think at this point, though, I would like to hand over to Roderick. And Roderick is going to take you through a use case just to show how it works. And I think that'll probably answer some of the questions as well about blockchain platform as a service. What value does it add? How can it accelerate the journey for companies that are embarking upon a blockchain-enabled or blockchain supported digital transformation journey? So with that, I'm going to hand over to Roderick.
All right. So what I'm going to do today, that screen looks weird. Let me try to share this again. It has a weird overlay. Let's share a window. Maybe that's better. All right, that should be better. All right, so what we're going to do today, we're going to do something very practical. We're going to launch an NFT collection on OpenSea from zero to OpenSea, essentially, in under half an hour. Now, this is going to go very, very fast, so there will be questions at the end for sure, but let's kick it off. Of course, first things first, we're going to need to put this on a blockchain network. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to add a network to our application, and we're going to do this on the Polygon testnet for now. We're going to name this node the Mumbai node. And in our platform, you can choose between different types of deployments, between different cloud providers. But for this case, I'm going to use Google Cloud in Brussels because it's closest to me. And you can pick your sizes. How do you pick your sizes? Depends on how much you want to do, how many transactions you want to handle. but for this use case, a small is more than enough. So this is now deploying both the network and the node, and this will take around 1 to 2 minutes. But while this is going on, we can already move over to the next piece. So the next piece is, as you know, an NFT is two things. It is a piece on the blockchain, and it is metadata and an image. The metadata and the image are typically stored on IPFS, a decentralized file system. So let's launch our IPFS node. We're going to call this brown bag storage. Again, putting it in Brussels on Google Cloud in a small layout. So our entire platform is pay-per-use. So if I destroy it, you stop paying for it. If you don't use it and you keep it running, you also pay for it. So it's literally per hour of runtime that you pay for these things, and each of them has an individual price. So our network is already there. So what we provide is a lot of insights. So you can see what is okay, this is a testnet. What is the testnet doing? But when the nodes are here and we have to wait a little bit longer, we can also see and interact with this node a lot more. Next up, we're going to need private keys. We're going to need the private key. We're going to create it here in the platform. You don't have to. You can, both on HSMs or without HSMs. In this case, I'm going to pick non-HSM ones because I need it later on in OpenSea. I need to connect it to my MetaMask wallet to interact with OpenSea. So I'm going to call this the deployer, and I'm going to activate it on the Mumbai node that we are just launched. So that's going on now. Of course, this is a real public network, so I need some funds. So I need my address, and I'm going to the Polygon faucet. This is just online for testnet tokens, and we're going to request some Matic testnet tokens for my wallet. All right. So the node by now is here. So what you can see is you can, of course, all the connection information. You can connect with whatever tools you want. But you also get insights in all the transactions that you are doing towards this node. You can see how many are you doing. Is stuff suddenly failing? It's all visible here. You can also interact with it directly out of the UI. And why are we doing this is because when you're working on applications, very often something doesn't work. And then it's very easy and handy to have an external tool that you can easily test your application with. So if we want to know what the chain ID is, we can execute it. And this is the request we've sent, and this is the response we've got. And since we're all developers that are using this platform, you also get it as a curl, because who trusts an external interface if you can do it from your terminal? We also expose resource information. So how much power is being used, how much memory is being used, how is it progressing over time, memory, CPU, and in this case, there is no storage, but for an IPFS node or an enterprise network, storage would be really important, because if it's full, then of course your application stops. And to go even deeper, you actually get full-blown logs of the node that you're interacting with. This allows you to easily see and debug issues when they pop up. So we have our storage, and again, storage always uses the same model: connection information, an online tool to use it, and resources and logs for what you want to do. So next step is a smart contract set. So smart contract sets are a way to, is how we bring smart contracts to the platform. No, out of the box, you don't see any code, form builder thing can build a smart contract which is worth anything. Smart contracts are complex pieces of code. They need to run on mainnets with many, many restrictions around gas costs, what you can do, what you want to do, with security issues. So going no code in this instance makes absolutely no sense, unless your use case is so trivial that you could have done it by hand, probably faster than using the form. So what we do is we provide you an online IDE. It's a full-blown IDE with a complete environment set up for you to actually work. So we're going to pick the node that we have launched, and then we provide a bunch of an ever-expanding group of use cases and base components. So you can start empty, you can start with an ERC20 token or an ERC721 token. But in this case, we're going to do a generative art project. We're going to generate something not as pretty or expensive as the Bored Ape Club, but similar. We're going to give this a name. This is the brown bag contracts. The IDEs are single user, so this is for my user. And again, we're going to put it in Brussels, but I'm going to pick a medium size because I want to generate a bunch of images and I need some more power. Over time, using the resources tab, you can scale your application up or down depending on your needs. All right, so now we have blockchain network, we have a blockchain node, we have storage and a private key. We have, let's see if our funds have arrived. We have no Matic yet. Did I do this right? Let's try again. There's always the challenge of using an online tool. Usually it's here within a few seconds. Let's come back to that later. So the smart contract set, this takes a little while to deploy. What else do we have? And I'm going to switch over to, what else do we have? We have, when you have an application, a blockchain application, like Matthew said, you have, of course, the blockchain pieces, nodes, smart contracts, specific blockchain middlewares, but you also have integration and extra needs. So we provide a series of integration tools, two for now, what we call the Integration Studio and an Hasura instance. The best comparison that I can make here is Integration Studio is logic as a service and Hasura is database as a service. So why not? Let's launch these. This is logic. And this is database. So in Matthew's presentation earlier, I'm probably now 6 months in to a traditional project. In timing, but we can take it from here. So the smart contract set is there. Quickly switch over to the private key. No balance yet. Yes, I have half a Matic. Perfect. That's important so we can execute transactions. So what are we going to do? And I'm going to quickly switch over to another application that's already running so we can already start talking about it and don't have to wait for the deploy. We're going to launch, we have launched this smart contract set and it has an IDE inside of it. And I'm going to open it full screen because working in a small image, in a small view is not useful. So what do you get in such an IDE for this specific use case? You get, first of all, extensive documentation. Everything you need to know, need to do is documented here, apart from, of course, our documentation website. But how this works, how you can configure everything, what is installed. So what do we have? We start off with a contract. This is the contract we're going to use, and it's a best practice setup for an ERC721 token sale. Not going to go into details. This would take us way too far, but the most important information is up here. Reserves, how many do we want to reserve for the team or for marketing actions? What is the price when we are doing the whitelist sale? What is the price when we're doing the public sale? How many can you get per transaction? And what is the maximum supply? I'm only going to do 20. Why? Because it saves time. And if you've seen 20, that's fine. But of course, your contract is only the second step. You have to start off with the art. So how does the art work? We have an art engine here, and we use this, and you use this to generate the art pieces. You have to start off, of course, with base art. So how does this work? We have layers, and every layer is a piece of the image. So we have a headset, we have a mask, we have the body where we're going to put it on. So this project is called Thumbs Up. You can see where the name comes from. You have a face on it, and you can define using these hashtags how common, or when you would generate 100, how many of them would have this this rarity, or would they appear in here? So you set these up, and notice here that we have both a background, which is just regular colors evenly spread, but we also have a unique folder, and this unique folder has a very special background for the most expensive of our NFTs. Now we're going to go into the setup here, and this is the most important part. This is how we're going to grow our edition. So we're going to start off with 18, and we're going to layer them with background, body, face, hair, and accessories in that order on top of each other, based upon the rarities or the probability that they're being used defined in the file name. But then we're going to grow to 2 more, and instead of using this background, we're going to use the unique background. So 2 of this complete set will be extremely rare. Now, I'm using 20, but you can grow this to 10,000, 20,000. You can have 10 layers, 5 layers, 3 layers, 2 layers. Everything is possible, and what you would see in these typical 10,000 token projects is that there are you have series with low amounts of attributes, high amount of attributes, etc. This art engine will also generate the metadata. So let's start with the first thing that's probably going to be ready by now. So let's go to the Brownback application in smart contract sets. Indeed, it is running. So let's open this IDE. Every task that you need to do is, first of all, described in the documentation, and secondly, is exposed using a simple task explorer. Doesn't mean you cannot execute them out of the terminal in here, but it's there. So the first task is going to be art engine build. When we execute this task, what you will see is it will generate 20 of our pictures, and look at the numbers, it's also shuffling them. That means that it's not 19 and 20, which are the very special unique ones. They are somewhere in here. So what we see here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and well, a little bit further are the 2 unique ones in our set. It is totally random. This is why you see these messages, because it generates a combination and then says, oh, I already have it. I'm going to skip this one. So when we have executed this, what do we get? We get in our build folder, we both have the images for all the different versions, and we have the JSON files, the metadata. The metadata, you define what is in there. So these are the attributes. You can define extra variables, but you notice that stuff like the IPFS link is not filled in yet. Why? It's not on IP. The image is not on IPFS yet, so we cannot fill this in. But we will handle that automatically. Okay, so we have the art engine built. Next step is we're going to deploy. You would see a whole list of deployment options here. They're described in what order you need to execute them. So we're going to start with deploy setup. This will deploy the smart contract on chain and will verify it. Now, to verify, you do have to have your own API key, which I will now add so it can be verified. I will destroy it after the session, so no need to screenshot this view. And we're going to deploy the smart contracts. Boom. So now we're actually putting the smart contract on chain, ready for the next steps. What happens here, and you can see everything and modify everything. You can see it here in these deployment files. We're executing first deploy thumbs up, and secondly, claim reserved. Claim reserved is taking those first 5 that we had defined in the smart contract and putting them on our own wallet. So we've compiled, we've created 20 placeholder images. You can choose to do this or not, but many of these projects first sell their tokens with a placeholder, so you don't see what it actually is or what the metadata is, and only in a later stage will reveal the application. And it's exactly the same thing as we will do. So the smart contract has been both verified on Sourcify and on Etherscan. So let's take a look at the smart contract on Etherscan. And it's always a little bit behind, so the next transaction will be here soon, but this is the contract creation and the contract has been verified. So the full source code is here, and you can even read and write to the contract. So let's see if our tokens are here. Do we have information about token 1? Yes. Our metadata comes out, but do we have information about token 8? No, token 8 does not exist yet. So Polyscan is always a little bit behind. So there it is. The collect reserves transaction is here. You can go in and see that we minted 5 tokens and assigned them to ourselves. All right, that's done. Token is essentially launched, but we are not quite there yet. Yeah. Next up, we've deployed this. We are going to skip over the whitelist and the pre-sale section. So a whitelist, we're using a technology called Merkle Roots to have a very efficient whitelisting system. But for our case now, this is not important. And we're immediately going to the public sale. So now these things need to be sold. Now to sell them, we're going to switch to the already set up, because of course for your front, I left out a very important piece. So in our application, we now have a smart contract sets, but how are you going to get the data? How are you going to get a list out of all these tokens? Yes, you can put them on OpenSea, but there is there's a very big use case of being able to display them on your own website to show how many have been minted and many use cases about them. This is why we have a middleware section. So we're going to add the middleware to the brown bag contract set. This is based on the graph, but you run it on your own in this platform. The reason is that whatever is available online is often very unstable. So we're going to do this thumbs up graph. Has to be connected to an IPFS node, and let's put it out in Brussels as well. Apply. This is deploying, and I don't know if you know, but let me then explain it to you. Smart contracts in these more common use cases, they use standards that define what they are. ERC20 is the typical token the typical tokens. ERC721 are the NFTs. Now, based upon that information, okay, if you know this contract is an NFT, an ERC721, you know which functions are there, and you can interact with it without having to do too many setup. So our smart contracts are set up with these and a few more of these interfaces. Like they're burnable, they're pausable, they're freezable, they have gasless listings for OpenSea enabled. There's a whole bunch of these in there. And you can define here for the thumbs up contract, what is this contract? Is this an ERC721? It's pausable, it's ownable, it has IPFS data, and it's freezable. You can configure this, but you can also use many more of these. There are many more of these data sources. So there is a set from OpenZeppelin, which is the base code for many of the things you do in smart contracts. But we also have indexes for state machines, for the vesting vaults when you do the crowd sale contract. And you can make these ones on your own as well, because what if your contract is just a little bit different? What if your contract has an extra field that you want to expose? And you can all build this yourself, which is why we've chosen to put everything into an IDE. So you can actually go in, see, okay, how are they doing freezable? How are they doing IPFS information? And then take that and modify it for your own purposes. Because sometimes these things are easy, but sometimes they're also very hard. If you take a look at how much effort it takes to index the metadata from an ERC-721 token. It's a bunch of stuff that is not necessarily easy and useful and to use. You get a full development suite, again, with full options, but for now, since we haven't done anything special, I'm just going to run GraphAll. Did I deploy the middleware yet? Yeah, the middleware is up. So I'm going to deploy this. Now, what this does is you define in the configuration, if this is an ERC-721 freezable, we're going to listen to the permanent URL event that this contract will throw on certain options, of course, in the freezable functions. And we're going to call the handle permanent URI function. And that function will then index the event, the accounts it interacts with. It will update, in this case, it will update the metadata. And you can write your own handlers for whatever you want to do to index all the data into an API. And the nice thing about this API is it's indexed into a GraphQL API. The benefit of a GraphQL API is that you can make very expressive models and query essentially all data in a single query. Whereas if you would go for a REST API, just to get the list of all the NFTs with their metadata, you would probably need 10,000 API calls, or even worse, if you have to go on chain, you would spend, the thing would be calculating for weeks before it actually had all the information that you needed to display a page. It is deploying right now. And at the end of this task, it will bundle everything up. So these indexes are compiled into WASM. It will bundle everything up. It will upload them to IPFS. And then it will signal the middleware, hey, there is a new version, please update. So when we go here, and this is where it's interesting to look at logs, for example, you see by default, it's just new, tail logs is on. You see new block comes in, but I don't have to do anything. Here it said, okay, data is incoming. And here, okay, now I know how to index certain things. Let's take a look. And it found, this is the indexing logic that is being added. And here you can see it figuring out all the data that it needs to index into the database. Look, handle transfer. These are the first mints that we've had for 721 general, but also 721 IPFS, etc., etc. And now that's here. And just imagine taking a look at OpenSea. When you look at OpenSea, what is a collection? Okay, this guy needs help. It is a list of all the tokens. It is some information on how much you have. And when you look at a specific token, you see all their attributes, you see the details of the contract, where it is, etc., and you see the transfers that have happened for this token. Now, all this information is now here in our version. And with this one query, we also provide you can execute this one query and you get all that information to actually build a replica of OpenSea, or at least the data that OpenSea is showing. This is not a marketplace in itself, but at least you have the data to start building. The nice thing again about GraphQL is that it's fully documented. So when you look at a query, these are the queries you can execute. If you want information about a smart contract at a certain address, you know it will return an ERC-721 contract. You can then fetch the information out of it, all the tokens, and a token is then described as this. And this is then an account, and an account has this information, and it's all statically typed, meaning you can make no mistakes, but you can make it very expressive because you can nest all these things. Hence this one single query. Okay, so essentially we're there. We have our blockchain, we have our information on chain, the placeholders for now. We have our middleware with all the information, and now we can go on. Now for this, we're going to switch to the one that I've already set up, because I've added the address of a deployment of this to a front end to show you how this looks like. I've added and I've connected it to the middleware, just as you saw right now. This middleware has exactly the same information as the one I just showed you. It's at the exact same state. So what can you do with this? Remember, we started off with with placeholder images because we haven't revealed our collection yet. So using this one single query, we now connected to this front end where we have the 6 tokens that are already minted. You don't see anything, which is the point. There's no information here. The only thing you can see is that we've minted it to this address. So, but let's see, a typical sale now moves into, after all the marketing, of course, in mint your own NFT sale. So let's do that. Let's go to the mint section. Okay, there we have minted 6. There's 14 left of 20 in total. It's costing this much Matic. Let's sign in. Let's sign in with MetaMask. Yep, hopla. We connect using, we fetch all the information from ENS and everything you want to do. So now we're ready to mint the our own token. So there we go. And this is a point what you don't see right now with the current share. Let me switch what I'm sharing. Share screen, window. So when I click that button, my MetaMask popped up. Can you put it on screen? Thank you. So my MetaMask popped up. This is all pre-programmed. With the price, you see the gas market happening. And now I'm going to confirm this, and then I'm going to switch back to my other screen while this is working. Confirm, thank you. So the window is gone now, so share my screen again. Brave. Okay, so we're back. You see it jump to 7, and this is automatically refreshing in the backend. You don't need to up the number yourself. Let's take a look at our collection again. We see indeed 7. The 7th one showed up, and when we take a look at the contract on Polygon, you would see this mint has actually happened here 29 seconds ago. Somebody minted, and this we now already earned almost €0.50 or $0.50 or not even. But still, the idea of the price is, of course, you can vary how much you want to ask. So now we've actually completely issued this. There's only one step left. This is, of course, not fun because they're not revealed yet. So let's do a live reveal here. Brown bag full, middleware, smart contract sets, IDE. Let's open up our IDE. Let's call up the Task Explorer here. If it wants to go, it's scanning all the possible tasks. There he goes. What do we want to execute? We want to execute reveal. So just so you see that I'm not making all this up, this is what it's going to be called when you do reveal. It's going to figure out how many images do we have. Do we have images? Are they pre-prepared? Are they pre-prepared? Just be sure. Yes, the images are there. It's gonna upload the images to IPFS. It's gonna change the URL which is being exposed out of the smart contract. It's then gonna freeze the tokens. Freezing the tokens, which is a specific thing which OpenSea, for example, listens to. It blocks you from changing the base URL again, because of course an NFT is only as good as the immutability of that NFT. And then we're gonna freeze all the tokens. We're gonna emit those events, which also triggers OpenSea to automatically refresh all the metadata. And as you've seen in our indexer, we're listening to ERC 721 freezable. So when this event comes in, we are going to be calling, we're going to fetch the 721, we're going to fetch the token, and we're going to fetch the metadata again to refresh it. So let's do this. Reveal. Boom. There goes the terminal. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller and already open up the collection view. Because if all goes well, these will, in a few seconds, automatically update to their actual views. It's always the exciting part in a live demo, the big reveal. Does it actually work? So in a few seconds, the boom. Here are our icons. You see, this is a unique one, and we have 7 minted. Anything which you mint after this point, is immediately revealed. So we can do it again. You're not seeing the you didn't see the nice reveal. I'm sorry, this was in a different screen. My bad. Let's put it back in here. So you see the collection appeared with all the information, with all the attributes, with all the transfers. And when you mint right now, and this is what you can see, this is the MetaMask pop-up. It's unfortunate I couldn't share my entire screen. I'm going to mint a new one. Confirm. And this will go up to 8. But let's look at it here. Wait for it to appear. Boom. I have a sad orange thumb with sunglasses minted to my address. So only one thing left to do. Let's put these up for sale on OpenSea. So on OpenSea, this is the testnet for OpenSeas, where you can try this out many, many times. I'm going to import an existing smart contract, but I'm going to disconnect first. I'm sorry. Log out, because I have to log in with the user that launched the application. So connect with this one. Connect. So this is me, and I have quite a few of these test setups already. But let's go here. Let's go to my collections. Let's go to import the existing smart contract set. Where is the address again? Here. Live on a testnet on Mumbai. Submit. And here is my collection on Mumbai. It had already indexed it, but is now fetching the metadata. So it's handling those freeze events. It listens to all freeze events. So it now will be fetching all the metadata, which is always terribly slow on IPFS, on the testnet setup that they have. And all the information will appear here just as it has in our website. So right now, this is still placeholder, but probably we can see for this one where it's still fetching the image. You can see the properties. You can see the details, the information, and everything you want, just as you can see in your own website. And that's essentially it. This is 0 to hero in, I can't remember how long I'm talking. If I have 5 minutes more, Daniel, I'll just keep talking until you stop me. The logic in the database online, so they use similar concepts. The database online, again, has its own interface with a GraphQL user, but you can make your own tables. You can put in your own information for users. You can interact with this completely via an automatically generated GraphQL API to do whatever query you want. And this one even has nice, I want from users, I want all the addresses, boom. Why do you use this? You use this for all the data that you don't want to store online. Maybe you have profile information, maybe you have KYC information, maybe you have likes and dislikes on things. You would not store those online on chain. You would store this in a centralized database. And last part is, of course, then the logic on chain. Again, with a nice interface. So logic is meant to integrate things between each other. And what we've seen now, we saw the website that minted the token, but you can do the same thing using logic. So this is one where you upload an image and you upload an image. It uploads them to IPFS. It adds some information. It's making metadata and uploading that as well. It is then minting the NFT and checking if the transaction went well. And you can do this completely yourself with whatever thing you want to do. For example, when an HTTP message comes in on the URL, do something, then we're going to sort the data that comes in, and we're gonna write to a file. Why not? But we will also, for example, where is it here? We're gonna talk to our GraphQL API, and the data flows through this. So you're supposed to do something, then it goes to sort, then it goes to write file and GraphQL. And when that's done, we're moving to a function where we can do essentially any JavaScript action that we want, including leveraging the entire ecosystem. So if I want to do smart contract stuff, we're gonna import ethers, and we're gonna just talk to whatever you want to do with ethers, of course. And then we're gonna wait. You can add more functionality. So let's do Twitter, and when we're done, oh, sorry, it's here. Let's install some connectors to Twitter. This will take half a second. Done. Then we have Twitter here. Then we're gonna send a Twitter tweet, with our message that we want to send to show that we've done what we've done. There are 3,000-4,000 of these modules. With the function tools, you can essentially write anything else. And minting an NFT is nothing more than this. So we import ethers. And I'm closing this because this looks complex, but it is not. This is just a file you get from the IDE. We're going to talk to this endpoint with this API key from to the API of the contract. And this is the piece of code that actually mints a new NFT. Nothing more to it. And that brings me to the end. So you have all the tools. Everything is there to combine whatever you want to do into an actual working application in half an hour. Of course, I skipped over the art generating parts and the tuning parts for my use case. But yeah, that's it. Hope it wasn't too quick.
Thanks very much, Roderick. Oh, that was really interesting. I'm just seeing if we've got any more comments on the comment section. There was just one which was from Sandeep, just elaborating on his question about the IBM cloud. I don't know if you wanted to elaborate on that a bit.
Yeah, so I partially responded in the chat, but I thought good to also get Roderick to weigh in on this one. But the question was indeed, is IBM Cloud an option? So today I'll just answer the first part. We support Google, Azure, and AWS. So users of the platform can choose the cloud that they want to work with, choose the region that they want to deploy in, and choose the protocol that they want to work with. And that's the setup, and click deploy. And as you saw in the demo, a few minutes later, everything is spun up and running. That's for the first part, and that is on AWS, Google, and Azure. Now, to the second part of the question, Sandeep asked if Hyper Protect on IBM Cloud can be selected as a node, and for crypto keys, can we use the crypto service available on CSP like HPCS? So I tried to partially respond to that, but I thought good for Roderick to jump in as well. The partial response is that this kind of integration with other systems is completely achievable through the integration studio that Roderick was demoing just a few minutes ago. So we could connect to other systems just through the visually programming those in the integration studio and setting up the custom data or systems integrations that we want to do.
Indeed. So there is, if you look at how does a blockchain platform fail, that is if you go into everything. You have to imagine that the blockchain space, there are 1,000 blockchains with 1,000 different options. There are 1 million tools, and there are hundreds of cloud providers. And everyone, of course, wants their cloud provider. The question here is, what do you support and what don't you support? What we are doing in our platform, yes, we're making some choices. You cannot abstract without making some choices for the users, which means limiting what we support a little bit. But, and this is a very big shift from what typical low code or no code platforms do, is we do not lock down any level of this platform. Meaning, use the nodes on the platform or don't. Use the smart contract sets or don't. Use the HSM keys that we offer or don't. Everything can be chosen, and everything is composable in the way you like. Some choices have to be made, but theoretically everything is possible. And this is still even apart from our on-premise and bring your own cloud solutions, where we can install essentially an application, as if you've seen here, inside any Kubernetes environment specifically.
Thanks, Roderick. I see. Yeah, nothing else just yet. Maybe I'll just chip in with one of my own questions, just while we're waiting to see if anyone else has anything to ask. So I was quite interested there, seeing that you had an IDE where you were physically creating the image which would form the NFT. So does that image somehow get represented on the core chain, or that's being stored inside of IPFS, right?
Correct. So you cannot. You can store certain things on chain. There's an entire branch of NFTs that are trying to do this, because this is the most immutable part, the most immutable that you can get. But typically, 99% of the cases, you link your smart contract to an IPFS hash. And knowing that an IPFS hash is both the hash of the content and the address of the file at the same time, you can link these two together and then fetch it from there, which is as immutable as it needs to be.
So I guess that then links your sort of token ownership to the image property itself. So I guess I suppose in theory, someone sees that on OpenSea, you can copy that and make 1,000 copies, but the token represents your ownership, and if the token, I guess, gets tied to the physical properties of the image, then that's one extra connection that kind of proves that it's yours, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. Do you have to store it on NTFS, or it's you can customize a lot of this?
You can put it in an API as well. Sorry, you can put it in an API as well, but it's even less. It's less.
Roderick, I think you've muted and turned your camera off. Had to attend to the dog, I guess.
Yeah, Doc had something to say about that. Just maybe while we're waiting for Roderick to come back, Matt. So who do you see? Which industry vertical do you see being the kind of most widely making most wide use of the platform so far? Is there one that seems to stand out from the rest? Is it finance? Is it NFT? Is it something else?
Yeah, and I think the with the flexibility of the platform, it's used in a lot of different contexts. Where we do see a concentration of use is in the area of banking and finance for asset tokenization. There's a rich set of templates in the smart contract library to support such use cases. And the second one is in fast-moving consumer goods, which are quite often looking at supply chain or sustainable supply chain tracking activities. Now, the interesting thing with the NFTs are applicable in all domains, of course, but that we do see the brands that are some of the brands that we're working with are quite interested in NFTs for the way that they can enhance engagement and drive. In some cases, changes in consumer behavior. So we have one that's looking at using tokens and NFTs to stimulate recycling, for example. So being able to, when I recycle a product, being able to collect a fungible token, build up the number of fungible tokens I have in my wallet, and use that for experiences in the metaverse, for example. So there's a lot of experimentation in that, and it's but definitely in terms of industry focus, we see a concentration in banking, but also in fast-moving consumer goods.
That's great, Roderick. So we see you come back. Do you want to finish your comment there before you? So you had to attend.
I think I was done with my comment, except my very nice dog always picks the worst possible moment to hunt something in the yard.
That's okay. I think we're all used to this now from all this home working going on. But yeah, so I think just having a check. Yeah, I think there's nothing else there now. And I guess we'll wait for the thumbs up token to go to the moon then, now that it's been shown to a few hundred people.
Indeed.
Yeah. Good.
So yeah, I think if there's no more questions, we can finish our session for today. I'd like to thank Matt and Roderick for providing that excellent presentation and demo. To everyone that's been tuning in to watch today and asking the great questions. We host these brown bag sessions twice a month, and next Tuesday, our community member, EPAM colleague Bhavani, is planning to talk about smart contract architecture. Those invitations will be sent out to the community shortly, so you can look out for those. We've also got profiles on all popular social networks. You can find those links on our community's webpage, and we'll publish the recordings of today's event on our YouTube channel. And just finally, you'll also receive to viewers a feedback form by email. We'd really appreciate your feedback to help us with planning some future sessions. This should hopefully just take no more than 2 to 3 minutes to complete. And just finally, thanks again to SettleMint for coming in today. Thanks for watching, everyone, and see you next time.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Bye-bye.